Hello, and welcome to the EDM Council and Octopai webinar titled Perform Enterprise Conversions at Scale with Data Lineage Automation. Jim Halcombe, Head of Product Management at the EDM Council, will be kicking off the presentation. Over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Yolan. Good morning and welcome everybody to our increasingly interesting topic of data lineage. We're getting a lot of interest here at the council around this topic, and I'm looking forward to hearing what our panel has to present to us and talk to us about on data lineage. I'm the head of product management, as Yolan mentioned, and my responsibility for products is our frameworks like the DCAM and the CDMC, which is our newest framework for cloud data management. And also I run the working groups and the trainings that we produce and provide available to you from the council. I want to welcome Nisim Ohayan and Fred Cohen, and also Sanjay Kalra from IntelliSwift and Octopai, respectively. I'm very interested, as I'm sure you are as well, to hear how they're deploying data lineage solutions to solve some scalable business migration problems. I've personally had my own data lineage issues that I wanted to share when I was at Lehman Brothers, and yes, it was at the most quote interesting time to be there. I had a data lineage project that took a very long time, and even by the time that I had produced it, it was very hard to get people to actually believe it and buy into it because it had to be done by hand, first of all. And second of all, no one had ever really done it. The goal was to figure out data quality issues around ratings, because credit ratings fed the risk engine. The risk engine determined how much capital the trading desk could commit on any given day. And so there would be disputes between the risk reports and what the traders knew that they had on their inventories at that particular time. And so it caused a lot of basically wasted time of arguing about what the truth of the situation really was. And they would do it like Groundhog Day over and over again. And once I laid out the actual lineage from the trading desk through the middle office, back office, and so on, all the way to the risk, which I called the caboose, it was very difficult to get people to actually believe that it was as convoluted and fraught with difficulties as it was. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys are approaching data lineage and projects like the one that I had, and hope to hear that you're having more success than I had back when I had to do it by hand. So I want to go ahead and kick things off with Nisim, if you don't mind taking us through some of the goals of this conversation.
Yeah, so very much like the way that we set out this webinar from the start, we kind of put out some thoughts as to what we wanted to discuss, and here they are. And this is exactly what we hope to be able to achieve in today's session. And thanks everyone for joining. So essentially, we're looking to really get a good perspective on things based on doing things at scale, especially when you're talking about conversions. You have companies that are merging with each other. Getting the conversion done typically has a major amount of pressure to get it done quickly, and in order to be able to continue the business of both sides of the both companies that are being merged, and then looking at different ways that you can leverage things like pre-built accelerators and automation and dashboards and so on. We'll be covering a little bit of all of that, as well as how to deploy some pattern recognition algorithms in order to be able to identify some regularities and irregularities. They're both interesting to identify and kind of pull out. And work from that point and get some good perspective as to how deep you can go into the analysis, and then how we can accelerate the conversions using some techniques that include looking at lineage from various different perspectives, which we'll talk about as well, and then finally highlighting the interdependence of all these data assets by making sure that there's a way for the business to actually have a visibility onto the assets that they're going to be consuming. So that's quite often the data catalog, and how that ties very, very neatly into data lineage. So that's what we hope to achieve in today's session. Let's see if we can get all that in our short time.
So before we get on to the meat of the conversation, we wanted to get your input. So wanted to know how your organization is currently tracing source to target dependencies in your data landscape. So the first option is that you don't do it, and it's really reactive, doing it manually and dealing with it through email or spreadsheets or whatever, but it's done on an ad hoc basis. I have been in organizations where automation was developed in-house to be able to, obviously that was not my particular case. I fell more in the first bucket with my Lehman story. And then the third is are you currently using any kind of off-the-shelf solution for proactively managing your source to target dependencies? Okay.
Actually, one of the questions that came in the chat was a good question that I think it might be relevant to say, which answer you might want to give. So I would say give the answer A if you're asking, why is there no question here related to doing it manually, which is not ad hoc? You're right that I think maybe that's true. You have a process, it's manual, it's not ad hoc, but I think that was kind of expected in the A section. Would you agree, Jim?
Yeah. So, but that's a fair point. Who's to some extent you can be semi-automated and have standard procedures, but you just don't have the automation in place.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, there's a majority, the clear majority of those in this conversation today do not have any automation. I think we can be safe to say that. Maybe some of those who responded to A do have some standard process that they're following, but it's not automated.
Mm-hmm.
And then 24 quarter of the group, which is pretty significant, I think, has some automation that's been developed in-house. You're able to see the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Well, thank you for everybody for your input. Fred, I think you're either Fred or Sanjay. I'm sorry.
That'd be me, Jim.
Sanjay. I apologize.
No problems. So I think we all agree that automation makes most sense when it's applied to processes that are repeatable and at scale. So let's talk about an example here of data conversion at scale. So we're taking the investment advisor industry. You're probably all familiar with this industry. A lot of your money is invested with them. This is a fairly large industry in US with more than 13,000 firms and 110 trillion in funds under management. And what we've seen is over the years, this industry has been marked by a lot of merger and acquisition activity, and that's kind of driven by both consolidation, the bigger firms buying out the smaller ones, also entry of some of the outside players like private equity players consolidating, buying multiple firms and consolidating those into a single entity. What that basically means is that all of the time, these folks, when they're merging, when they're acquiring investment fund companies, the investment fund data from one company, from the acquired company, is getting merged into the acquiring company's systems. And that's easier said than done. It's not a simple exercise. And complexity added to that is that it's time bound. It's business critical for both the organization to achieve it in a particular period of time, and their essentially their business depends on it, right? So this is one thing that we've been doing a lot of business in terms of data conversion. And one of the things that we noted, when we did a lot of these conversions, and Jim, I think you can skip to the next slide.
Sure.
is that basically, as you do more and more of these conversions, you start looking at some of these common denominators in terms of what this process looks like in pretty much all of these cases. Of course, it starts with identifying stakeholders, and especially in an M&A situation, not only are you identifying stakeholders from business, from ops, from IT, from other parts of the organization, but you're doing that across two organizations. That involves also identifying all of the data SMEs, and that's basically your reporting experts, your data storage experts, your data warehouse experts, again, across the two organizations. Discovering and cataloging all of the data, the source data, the target data across the two organizations, fairly complicated process in one company itself. When you do it across two, it becomes that much more complicated. Then you have the data lifecycle, essentially understanding how the data flows in the organization to get from source to report or source to dashboard, and essentially understanding, managing, documenting all of that process. Of course, then it leads to the conversion and cleansing of data, which is your transformation, data wrangling, all of that stuff. That's when you start looking at automation, because if you're doing this more than one time and you're doing it at scale, you start looking at opportunities for automation to reduce the time it takes, to improve the accuracy and make it repeatable, right? And of course, any data that goes into the new system, and it has to be tested again and again before it actually makes it to production, right? So basically, as we look at these common denominators or components of the overall process, it essentially leads to a eureka movement. Nothing new there. This is how the factory, concept came into being in the industrial age back in the 19th century. And we thought, why not apply the factory, concept to this data conversion? And my colleague Fred will now take us through, how we think about this in a factory model, and how we leverage, pre-built components and automation like AI-based Lineage as part of that conversion factory. Fred, over to you.
All right, thank you. But let's talk about the conversion factory. The conversion factory, the modern conversion factory, is a whole bunch of interconnected frameworks, and takes all of the major components to execute a very conversion methodology that includes an entity engine, a recon engine, machine learning, and Lineage. Lineage is at the forefront of this to make sure that what all the data that is moving around from the enterprise, that goes to the right place at the right time, and the institution can mix and match the applications, whether depends on the infrastructure that you already have in or adopt advanced technology. New companies want to optimize how to get the best ROI on those technologies. So there's also a very conversion factory model that has a cohesive UI to make sure that all of the stakeholders that are participating in the conversion get all of the methodology and all of the results right real time. So it's not the conversion factory. The new ones are not a patchwork of people and applications, but now analytics are right in the middle of the conversion to be critical in the models and getting the maximum ROI. We go one more time. Next, please. So, as a case study, and I've been through over 10,000 fund conversions, and it used to be done in the old days, you would do it with Lineage into spreadsheets. You would put a lot of people up, and you would have to do months and months of reconciliation across the lineages to move all of the data and all of the technology into the different silos of the organization. But now with new technologies, such as Octopai and others, now it's done instead of the last 10 years of what people used to do. Now they do it in a couple of weeks, and it's amazing that now we could take all of that AI and to be able to integrate it across the entire enterprise and make a really set of key differentiators for Lineage. The middle layer of the conversions is what I call the intersection of the data. In the middle of that is going to be a lot of new untapped actionable data insights for data, so that you can also, the institution can now cross-market. They can interrogate the business and technology silos, and to extract ROI, so that the senior management and the customers get the progress on these conversions right away.
Did I advance this appropriately, Fred? I'm sorry.
That's fine. Yep,
Okay.
that's fine.
So we wanted to get based on what you just covered, it'd be nice to know where you all are at in your where you see the most impact in data lineage. So we have a couple of different choices here. Change and impact analysis can include you're going to make a change in your environment. You want to see how many different downstream systems are going to be impacted by the change that you're making. And then also from the standpoint of planning, if you're consolidating or moving data from one place to another, using Lineage to be able to get more crisp on that analysis. And then root cause analysis, of course, is identifying, to the extent that you have a problem, where did it start? And understanding how that propagates throughout your data ecosystem. Then planning for your data migration projects, as I mentioned, including, oh, good. All right. So we've got everybody in. So the results are in, and it's data governance initiatives. And then after that, the change and impact analysis, and then root cause after that, and then only in 10% of cases for migration projects. So would any of you want to comment on the results here, or?
Yeah, well, I find it interesting actually that the data governance is one of the main initiatives for data lineage in this area, because it's one of those things that seems to be kind of an afterthought by a lot of the data governance approaches to providing a rounded solution. So typically the question is then, what kind of lineage are they looking for? Is it just strictly they want to know, how did this data set come into play? Or are they looking for actual actionable information where they can actually do some technical work on the actual assets? So different
there's
use
a lot
cases.
that can be said about unpacking data governance initiatives. In fact, in preparation for this conversation, this was probably one of the most one of the longest and most fruitful parts of the conversation, is talking about all the data governance opportunities that an organization could pursue. And I will be bringing up later that this conversation is dovetailing quite nicely into the council is going to be launching a data lineage work group. And so we're going to be looking for anybody who's interested in hearing more about that to let us know in another poll. So just hold off. We'll be asking that question coming up.
All right, great. So I've got a case study to share with you as well. It was an interesting scenario. It was a telco, one of the top 3 telcos in the country that was acquiring an ISP. And they had some very specific goals that they wanted to go quickly into each other's customer base and start cross-selling telco services to the ISP customers, ISP services to the telco customers, and really start to take advantage of the fact that they were now one larger organization with a broader set of services. Naturally, some of the subscribers would comment to both, so they had to be careful how they approach those, and maybe offered them something special. Whatever the case was, they had to quickly consolidate or reconcile all this data into one set of data so that they could actually identify when they have a salesperson and they're on the phone with the client, they'll know that they can actually cross-sell this one, or perhaps this is a brand new customer that neither of the divisions have. So that information was obviously going to be very clear to them to try and get to the point where they would be able to really take advantage of the merge. So their challenge really was that after looking at their data landscape, they realized that one of the major differences between their data landscapes was the ETL basis platform. So the ISP that they had acquired was working on IBM Data Stage, while they themselves were using Informatica Power Center. And what they wanted to do is they decided after some review to retire the IBM Data Stage and migrate all of that information, all those processes, into their Informatica Power Center instance. But as they started out that process manually, they realized how much there was that was downstream of that ETL system, and they decided to start doing some research for some automation tools. It wasn't a very long search, because actually one of our founders used to work at this telco, and the management realized that wait a minute, there's a startup founded by one of our ex-employees, and they actually started out this tool. So yeah, let's take a look and see what it is. So very quickly we were able to do a demonstration that gave them some perspective. And ultimately, really what the solution was that, yeah, they wanted to go ahead and automate that lineage mapping in order to be able to see the ability to map from source to target. So at the end of the day, what they were looking at was a lineage that included everything from the start at the ETL point all the way down to the reporting layer and every transformation in between, and then just decide how they were going to migrate, or which they were going to migrate to through that conversion process into the new ETL system, which is Informatica in this case, right? So they needed to map the interconnectivity between all the assets and make sure that the source target tools that were all included in this migration process, sorry, not migration, in this conversion process, were going to be supported, and that included Oracle database, Cognos, Data Stage. I saw a question pop up. I didn't read the whole thing, but the question was, does Octopai integrate with Calibra? The answer is yes. There's a direct integration with Calibra. It's actually in the marketplace there, which means basically that you'd be able to not only see the lineage in Octopai, which is typically where the IT team is going to work, and then you'll have that migration, that data ported over into the Calibra environment for the business users to be able to use that as well. Ultimately, the impact was really amazing. I mean, ultimately, the stakeholders that were in on this, obviously from, this was an acquisition, so naturally from the C-level down, there were many stakeholders involved, and they wanted to see that they were able to go out and start selling to their newly acquired customer base, and from both sides. So it was very helpful to them to see that they were immediately able to get a good sense of trust that the data mapping was correct, that the reports that they were getting were trustworthy, and that they could actually go ahead and see that their salespeople were able to make the connection between somebody new or somebody who needs to be cross-sold or whatever the case may be. So, and they had a very quiet go live, which they reminded us many times over that they were kind of expecting to have to put out some fires, that some of the data pipelines were not supported, but in fact they were quite surprised that it was quite quiet. So that's just a case study as to how it can go.
We've got about 4 or 5 questions between the Q&A and the chat. If there's any of those that you'd like, some of which are pertaining to this particular slide, but
So
not all.
jump in and take a look. Okay.
So one question is does this serve as a data catalog, or do you integrate with a separate catalog?
So we can do both. First of all, we have an integrated data catalog. It gives you the ability to, as you work, do the documenting as a data engineer or data architect, whatever that you might be in, in mapping the lineage and understanding where things are coming from and what the transformations are. That documentation is exactly what you need to make sure that the business users are actually consuming the data properly. So it needs to be documented right away. So there's 2 ways that you can work. You can actually map the lineage to a third-party application, but Octopai actually includes a data catalog as well, which gives you the ability to actually have that information in a data catalog, which Octopai provides. And if you have a third-party data catalog that you might be using, then we could actually even let the IT people work inside of the Octopai data catalog and just push that information into the third-party data catalog as well.
And then this is kind of similar, but question about the visuals of the hops, and then how far you can drill down. There was a question on that, what's the lowest level that you can drill down to, and I think these 2 questions are kind of similar.
Okay, great. Well, actually, I think one of my colleagues is responding to some of these questions, and I'll let them go ahead and do that. But insofar as actually, if you can advance to the next slide, it'll probably answer a little bit of that.
Great.
So we talk about, different perspectives of looking at lineage. Lineage, in general, you could actually say that, okay, well, we have lineage because we can see the source to target systems, which is the top level lineage that we're looking at here, cross system lineage. So on the right here, you can see the different colors. On the left part of that screen of that image in blue, those are the ETLs represented. And then you've got in red the database objects, and then in yellow you've got the analysis tools, and in the green off to the right you've got the reporting tools. So basically those are system wide, right? All the different systems that are touched in a lineage of a certain report or a certain view, a certain ETL, whatever it might be. Okay, now you know everything that's involved insofar as the system level. But if you really want to know what's going on at the code level, you need to go down into the actual visual of the lineage at the column level of the inner system of the inside that system. So the next one down is inner system lineage, which is going to give you a much deeper view of what's going on in there. Quite often, you will get vendors that offer lineage within their own system, right? So you'll get inner system lineage from them. But the problem is that you won't be able to get necessarily outside of that. Like, for example, okay, so I can see how we transformed inside of this database application, this ETL, this report, whatever it might be. So each of these have their own inner system lineage, which is fine. But can we actually now know that this column actually came from this business application? For that, you need end-to-end column-to-column lineage, which is going to go from ingestion all the way down to reporting layer, everything that happens to that column alone. So it's a very granular in that sense, but it's also cross-system. So it kind of zooms out and in at the same time. So it's 3 different ways that you can look at lineage. Perhaps there's more, but these are the 3 we're using.
So yeah, we do have this time to field any kind of questions, and we're right on time, guys. So we're doing a good job. But we did leave a lot of opportunity to discuss any specific questions that you have. I think you answered some of them already, Nisim. How about this one about legacy code?
So I'm not going to be able to speak at the code level, but I can tell you that whether it's on-prem or cloud, Octopai has and can support them both. The code, I think we might need to take that offline and have a discussion. I see that your name is revealed, so perhaps we'll reach out to you to give you some detail as to what kind of code systems are supported. Pratik is asking for the details on the architecture of the solution. So I would say that that would be something that I'd be happy to take aside as a side discussion, but I'll give you a high level understanding. The architecture makes it really, really simple, because essentially what we do is we give the end customers a Windows client, basically a small application that you just run on a VM or a server or laptop, whatever you want. Go ahead and run that, and it will be pre-configured for your data landscape. The only thing you need to do to configure it, to run it, is to basically put the credentials and the addresses of each of the systems that you want Octopai to collect the metadata from. So we have a pretty large list of the things that we support out of the box. We'll soon have an open API so that if it's not supported out of the box, you can also map third-party applications to Octopai. But for the time being, the out-of-the-box solutions are the best way to get the data into Octopai, or the metadata only into Octopai. And that's kind of high level how the technical capability, how it's technically done insofar as how do we collect the metadata. After that, it's all automated. So really, it's going to be between an hour to half a day to get the configuration done on the Windows client. The results are going to be uploaded to Octopai, and that's it. After that, it's fully automated.
We have some questions also in the chat here about interactively being able to drill, I think, between those levels that you presented in the previous slide.
Sorry, which question was this?
I'm looking in the chat. There's can you interactively drill down? Trying to keep up because
Definitely. Yeah, I see that.
I think it's referring to that last slide where you showed the different levels of detail.
Yeah, it's actually
easily
interactively
navigable through, seamlessly through a drill down.
Yeah, that's actually the fun part about Octopai, is the ability to drill not only down into the different levels of lineage, but also drill into the different assets through the data catalog, right over to the lineage from there, or through the discovery module, rather than having different subject matter experts doing research on what code might be present in this system or that system. You can actually just do a quick search of the entire, it's basically your Google for all your metadata. Okay, just going to try and scan through and see if there's any dissolved command capture.
Yeah, we've got some both in the Q&A and the chat. The next question was where the space is moving. Best of breed, integrated solutions.
I would say that definitely well, you know what? Let me open it up to Sanjay to answer from their perspective. I mean, they're partners of ours that we're looking for an integrated solution, and how do they come to their customers with a robust answer to, oof, we've got this huge migration going on, and you guys are migration experts. How do we do this, right? So maybe you can answer it from your perspective.
I think that's a valid question, because we see a lot of that. When we're working in a conversion engagement, we're increasingly seeing customers being open to the best of breed, which basically means that when we provide conversion as a service, right, in a factory model, we're essentially putting together the right tool set, right? That includes a lot of the frameworks and automation and algorithms that we've built over repeated conversions like this. and bringing in tools like Octopai, which is effective, very, very effective in cutting short the amount of time that it takes us in the conversion process to manage all of the data discovery and data cataloging, to identify all of the source and all of the lineage part, right? So essentially, we work in a best of breed model in terms of putting together a set of processes, frameworks, accelerators, and tools to solve the problem, right? And I've seen that increasingly people are moving away from large platforms who kind of do a little of everything to having a best of breed model. Now, that's not to say that there's a lot of incumbents in that space with large platforms who continue to do very well. But I think the overall trend that we see is that most customers, they're open to bringing in best of breed because that gives them the distinct differentiated advantage, which it may not get with the platform vendors.
Sanjay, I went back to that first slide that kind of broke down the factory.
Sure.
Did the capabilities that drive the best of breed solutions roughly align with these boxes?
Certainly the discover and catalog and data lifecycle is where a lot of that is. And then some part in the conversion and cleansing where we do a lot of our own, algorithms and frameworks that we've built that Fred talked about. So things like reconciliation engine, things like entity resolution and stuff that we have built, which is kind of more domain specific. So if you're talking about, funds, we've got some accelerators which are specifically related to that kind of data and stuff like that. But those three boxes would be where obviously a lot of this AI and automation plays.
Great. Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of comments around wanting to see more visualization of how these capabilities work. I don't know how we want to address that, but there are a couple of comments around that.
I think the answer to that probably is that we can take it offline and we can reach out to folks who are interested in knowing more about the overall solution and even including a demonstration of some of the capabilities.
Okay, I see my colleague Ophir is doing a great job answering some of the questions. I'm just scanning for others that might not all be answered yet. There we go.
I'm just looking through some of the chat as well. So I think you commented, Naseem, on the architecture question, right? And then there are just some questions about different. So this is there was a question I saw about is this a cloud solution? What kind of environments are you deployed on?
So typically, well, not typically, exclusively, the Octopai solution is actually in the cloud, but that doesn't mean that we don't support systems that are on-prem, right? So when we deliver the Octopai client to our customers, it's just that Windows client that I was mentioning before. Essentially, that can go to scanning the metadata systems, whether they're in the cloud or on-prem for the client. Then that produces local XML files that basically have the metadata inside of them. So the InfoSec team can do a quick review to see before anything gets uploaded to the cloud that there's only metadata there. So that's one point that's important for everyone to know, is that in order to get that kind of lineage that we're talking about, that you can actually see it from all different perspectives, all of that is done with just that running of the Octopai client, and it goes very quickly to the cloud where we are operating the application. But again, strictly and exclusively the actual metadata, no actual data. In fact, we never even have access to the data because we're only scanning information from data intelligence tools like ETL, data warehouse, and analysis and reporting tools.
And with these conversions, is there a proportion or trend towards migrations into the cloud versus migrations happening on-prem versus it's in the cloud, but it's a migration within the cloud? Just Sanjay or Fred, if you want to speak to that.
Sure, I can speak to that. the migration to cloud is a big trend. So, I mean, if you look at some of the trends driving business in the conversion area, right, that we've been very much involved with, merger and acquisition is just one of the triggers which causes that. It's a big trigger, especially in this industry, especially in the financial services industry. But the cloud migration is another big one. We've seen a lot of activity around that. Some of that is simple in the sense that it's really just moving your infrastructure to cloud. So you're not actually doing any transformation. You're essentially just lifting and shifting. That's mostly an infrastructure issue. But we've seen that most people, when they go to cloud, they want to make the full use of cloud, which means there is a certain amount of transformation that is going on, right? So it's not a one-to-one, lift and shift to the cloud. And many of the things that we talked about here, including Lineage, including some of the robust frameworks and accelerators that we bring to the table, all of those have relevance just as much in the cloud migration as it does in a M&A-led migration, conversion.
Thank you. Now we do have another poll question. Is that, Yolanda, is that coming up next after this slide?
Sorry, who you're asking who?
I asked Yolanda if we had a one more poll question for interested parties in the data lineage discussion at the council, and then we were going to leave some time.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to confuse things in the chat because we really wanted to hear what your questions were pertaining to the presentation. But I wanted to let all of you know that this is a very timely and interesting topic for the members of the EDM Council. And we'd like to know if you're interested in that topic continuing, because we're going to be establishing a work group to produce some articles and talk about best practices and things of that nature around data lineage. And we'd just like to get a sense of your own level of interest. So please let us know, and we will keep you in our list of those that we make sure that we're communicating to as we develop that conversation more fully here at the council. Are there any other? We've got about 15 minutes left. So we do have time for a little bit more questions before we just kind of let you guys talk about your companies. That's where we're going to end.
So just looking at the questions, I think that Pratik had a question about the architecture. If that wasn't a detailed enough answer, I think probably we can definitely do that on a separate session. But
looks like an answer is in development as I'm looking here. So
what do you mean?
It says Octopai is typing an answer.
Yeah,
so.
That was me. I started to type the answer.
And I think you did answer that that you have your scanning is on-prem, it's in the cloud. It's across a variety of different environments. I don't know if you is it primarily financial institutions that you've been working with on these solutions? Where you presented a telecom example, is it fairly dispersed across industries?
Yeah, definitely. So the primary organizations that are I guess most popular with Octopai are banks and insurance companies, healthcare, and manufacturing organizations. Typically larger organizations, I would say, with thousands of employees that have so many reports and so much riding on their data that they need to make those decisions in a lightning fashion, but are lacking the automation tools to get that done. So those are the primary ones. Yeah, finance is the main core, definitely.
And I'll give you another example, right? I mean, it's not just the M&A activity, right? A lot of the time, conversion is part of the business process for many of these companies. So think about another example that you're probably all familiar with, 401k managers, folks who manage your retirement funds. Every time they get a new customer, well, most of the times the customer is essentially coming from another 401k provider, which means that basically when you take on this company of say 1,000 people or 10,000 people, essentially you're going to look at all of the payroll data, all of the fund data, all of the contribution data, and so on, and you're going to merge that now into your system. So think about, Liberty versus Schwab or whatever. I mean, every time they get a customer, they're essentially doing a data conversion. In fact, we're working with one customer here that does about 400 of these competitive migrations from another fund to their fund. So 400 times they do the data conversion in a year.
That's a lot.
Right.
Hence the need to be able to do this at scale.
That's why the need for automation, because if you're going to take weeks for understanding where your data sources are and how the data flows, we can do it in a couple of days with Octopai and the AI-based Lineage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting point actually, because quite often the initiator, the motivation towards purchasing a tool like this tends to be like a merger, migration, anywhere where there's going to be a lot of impact and they're planning for it and they need to figure out how to get through it all. So that'll kind of drive the purchase. But what's interesting is that customers stay with the tool long after that major project is gone. And the reason for it is exactly as you said, there's still a lot to do, right? There's constant changes going on. And perhaps one of the main reasons is, as the poll indicated, a lot of people are looking for data lineage because it's kind of a requirement for a robust what's the word again?
Governance. Yeah.
Data governance.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting question here about data lineage between SaaS.
Sure. Again, we support SaaS or on-prem solutions. It doesn't really matter. It's yeah. And ultimately what you'll have is the metadata in the cloud in a single repository. So you don't have to go from one system to another when you're looking for something. You have it all in one place. You do a quick search and it's quickly provided to you in a consolidated format.
That's great. I mean, from my perspective from previous roles, it's not always easy to get a view into that data unless you have something like what you're providing, and that has not only implications for data governance but also the CISO,
Right.
and for purchasing. And there's a whole, it's easier for individual business leaders to go and just use their corporate Visa card and all of a sudden you have a new app and new data that nobody really knows about. So the ability to scan the environment, know what's popping up and get a view of what's on the inside with the data, that's valuable.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just looking at another question that was asked earlier by Duke about do I see the industry moving more towards multiple vendor, best fit for purpose tools, single vendor tools, and so on. So we built Octopai primarily as a tool that is really focused on the IT team, right? A lot of the data governance tools are really kind of bleeding a little bit into Lineage as well, because Lineage is a required feature of a data governance approach. But the tool is more designed quite often for a business perspective. So the data team doesn't really get the technical lineage that they're looking for necessarily. So when you're looking at Octopai from that perspective, I think that you could understand that we're looking at it from the persona perspective, that this is a tool that is primarily designed for the IT team to use. However, we put a data catalog in there so that there'd be a place for them while they're sitting in the Lineage to go ahead and document as they go along, right? rather than have to, alt tab to another application, they're basically still inside the same application, and they can easily continue to document what they're doing. So whether that means that these are siloed applications, I don't think so, because ultimately the open API that we're working on, as well as so many other vendors that are using these types of interconnectivity tools, it means that ultimately you can actually have these different applications that are kind of designed specifically for a function, and then go ahead and continue that flow of data into the applications where the other types of personas are working.
So I'm going to move us on to tell us about yourselves here, as we're getting towards the end of our hour and need to start wrapping up. So either Sanjay or Fred, if you want to talk about IntelliSwift for us.
Sure. Thanks, Jim, and thanks to EDM Council and Octopai for inviting us to this very interesting webinar, something which is very much close to our hearts. And it was good interacting with a lot of folks in the industry who have questions which really are the questions that we are getting from our customers, and we are solving for them. So I look forward to participating in the data lineage interest group in EDM Council and continuing this conversation. Quick word on the company itself, IntelliSwift. We started in the Bay Area about 21 years back. We are a minority-based enterprise, very much focused around diversity in our workforce. And we really started when there was another technology staffing crunch back in 2001, when all the e-commerce and Web 1.0 was taking off. Since then, we've become basically a digital transformation advisor to a lot of our customers. So today we service over 130 Fortune 1000 and big tech customers, and increasingly focus around the digital portfolio, which includes product engineering, digital enterprise, and data management and analytics. Conversion Factory is very much part of our data management and analytics portfolio. And with leaders like Fred, who's taking it to our financial services customers, and other folks in the organization, we're taking it to various different industries. Overall, the company has grown to about 2,000 people. We are a global company, so most of the customers are North America based, but they're all global customers. So we service them from our 12 locations in US, our 3 locations offshore factories in India, in Pune, Mumbai, and Bangalore, and 2 nearshore locations in Costa Rica and in Hungary. And we're really excited to have partners like Octopai to be able to take these solutions to market, where the solutions like Octopai complement our frameworks, our as a service model of delivery for our customers.
That's great. Yeah, and I see the array of verticals that you're working with here on the right hand side. So
that's right. We took the example of financial services because financial services probably is the largest for most people, but it's by no means the only one for us.
Mm-hmm.
And Nisim, if you could take some
Sure.
time to talk about Octopai.
So yeah, at a glance, I guess this might even give a little bit more insight as to some of the questions about, how does it work? So first of all, as you see in the bottom of these 4 buckets here, this is in the bottom, you'll see that there's those 4 areas that we collect the metadata from, and that's the only area that we go. So it's the ETL, the data warehouse, the analysis tools, and the reporting and analytics tools. So that's basically where we get it. Now, how do we get it? We can, dive into that in more technical call, but basically presume that you've performed that 1 to 3 or 4 hour effort. You upload that to Octopai, and then basically what you're going to be able to do is use these different modules, which are for data lineage, data discovery, data catalog. We're coming out real soon with the versioning and insights to BI dashboard. So that's already there in the slide. But aside from that, these are the types of projects that you'd be able to use the tool for. So it's really quite a versatile tool for everything related to lineage, and with a very deep level of understanding as to the source to target and transformations in between each one, So it's pretty impressive. When you see a demo, you'll understand a little bit better how the tool can actually be used. Quite a very easily understood interface for something as technical as Lineage. It's quite refreshing to see this kind of an interface for this kind of technical understanding of what you're looking at across the board. It's not just a bunch of boxes and lines. It's quite useful. Ultimately, what makes Octopai quite different in the marketplace, I would say, is that you've got a very simple setup. I mean, we make it quite simple by creating this Windows client that you just run. It knows exactly how to get the metadata from the systems that we support out of the box. So it'll go ahead and just collect that metadata for you without you having to figure out and configure everything. After that, it's fully automated. I mean, basically your effort manually to get this level of lineage that we're talking about is done out of the performance of just a 1 hour or so effort, and then very quickly you're up and running. You get that deep technical lineage, you get an integrated data catalog, and also the ability to really properly visualize and find any of the data elements in your landscape. So yeah, that's Octopai at a glance. We invite you to come to the website and ask for a demo, or share this recording with anyone that you think that might be facing any kind of a major change in their data landscapes. Certainly anybody who's doing mergers and acquisitions. These are kind of the big impact areas that would generally justify, we need to get a tool. We can't do this manually anymore.
Yeah, and just to, thank you for that. And just also to refer back to Sanjay and Fred, how important it is that when you're bringing in a tool with the power and the capabilities that you're presenting, being able to put that in the context of something that's going to deliver value, and identify and basically bring in a community of users to start developing that capability in-house. It's really important to pick the right projects, in my experience, to apply these kind of capabilities. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming and bringing this very valuable and interesting set of examples and capabilities into this new and evolving space in data lineage. And thank you, everybody, for giving us your time and expressing your interest. And you will be hearing more from the council. And I encourage you to take any further questions or interests in this capability back to these organizations after the call. So with that, thank you again for your time, and we will bring the webinar to a close.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much for joining.